Welcome to the Kapitol Life podcast. I am your host, Abby Pagud. This is where we talk about all the things, the good, the bad, and the healthy. And if you can notice, we have a little bit of a change of scenery if you're seeing us from viewage. We are on vacation. That is probably why I am many shades of different colors.
I'm just dark.
And he is. So, we have named the show Heat Waves because it's getting hot in here. And originally we were going to talk about dehydration and all the things of how the heat affects you. But instead, since we had the opportunity of being on vacation, I actually thought it might be a good idea if we made it a little extra hot in here and talked about men versus women. So we are having a very special edition. This is my husband, Rudy Pagud. He is amazing. If you did not catch the episode of Father's Day edition, when I talked about all things balls and men and all of those fun things, he was there in all of his facial expressions. So if you didn't catch the live feed, you might want to, just for the mere entertainment of seeing both of our facial reactions to our responses. But I have requested a special list per se. I have requested a list from both of us on talking about the things that we find about each other that are different. And they could be good things, they could be bad things, or they could be highly annoying things. But before we get to that list, so stay tuned. Like and subscribe and follow, and then stay tuned because we're going to get to that list because I have not heard what is on his list and he has not heard what is on mine. So our perspectives might be slightly different because we are men versus women. So before we get focused, we want to talk about a little bit of our focus programs. You can reach your focus programs. It is summertime. People are focusing on exercising and body and core development and just fine-tuning those finer assets. And in that, you can go to thekapitolhealth.com and get your focus programs. If you use code TheKapitolLife, you will get $15 off all programs. Not one, not two, every single program that you get, which each one of those programs can get you anywhere from 6 to 8 workouts, depending on what your focus point is. The other thing that I really have to stress of importance is the Amaya team. They are Capital Partners of the Month. They are freaking phenomenal, especially when mortgages and having to get your house. It's just freaking annoying having to deal with all of the signing and all of the contracting and hunting and all of that process. They make the entire experience super smooth, super fun and exciting, and they really try to make sure that you are taken care of to boot. So don't forget to call them because they are freaking fabulous.
You know what I think about the Maya team? I think what's good about them is they give us confidence, the peace of mind.
Yes.
That most people really are looking for. It's the peace
Completely.
of mind. Yes.
Absolutely. And Chelsea herself is very much a kind of a free spirit like myself, which means, when you break down that outer shell, you're going to have a crap ton of fun. I'm just saying. So if her and I hung out on a regular, I'd probably be in hot trouble.
Trouble.
A lot of trouble.
Great stories, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So we're going to get into it. So, like I said before, like and subscribe and follow so that you make sure you get all of your updates because we want to make sure it happens. Now, are you getting hot in here? Because I'm starting to get hot in here.
Yes, it's getting hot in here.
It's a heat wave.
Take off all my clothes.
Oh,
I know where you're going.
I almost started singing that song too.
Okay.
Okay.
All
well, at any rate,
totally non-script.
We're going to talk about men versus women. And when it comes to the Father's Day edition, I highly encourage you to look back because it was the combination of the different reaction we both have when it comes to Mother's Day versus Father's Day and how we respond to that is how we kind of got onto this subject. I found this freaking amazing website that is called Factinate. Like Factinate, like fascinate, Factinate. See how they did that play on words? I like how they do that. So basically, with the Factinate, I found this issue where they did 45 scientific ways that men and women are different.
Oh gosh.
Now I went through
45?
Yeah, I went through all of them. All 45. I have all 45 of them right here on this fun little piece of paper. Now, do I think we're going to get through all 45? I highly doubt that. But then I will reserve them for another time of men versus women.
Typical woman. We'll go through all the problems before we go on. Yes. Typical woman.
I wasn't going to bring up problems. I was just going to bring indifference. Indifference does not mean problems.
That's true. That's true.
Speaking of perceptions, because that clearly was one, I think it's time for us to secretly reveal the good, bad, and annoying traits on your list for me.
Okay.
Oh, you wrote it down.
Are we doing it one at a time, or read all mine first and read all yours?
What do you want to do?
Let's do one at a time so we can compare.
All right, fine.
All right. So one of the things, first thing on my list is emotions.
Okay.
Yes. In my past experience, and I've picked up on it just recently, men and women differ on emotions. For example, men connect physically. Physically, we connect. We have to be able to be assured that we're them in a house or we're doing good. Just physical attraction. Let it be verbal, touching, whatever it is. Women, they're not. You're not more so the physical type. You're more the emotional type. So
I need the feels.
And let me
feels are important.
tell you, men, and it's helped me. It may not help you, but it could help you. If you can find and own that emotion bridge, you will get everything you want, everything you need, everything you crave, and put aside all the stubbornness. And I can't force my wife to get physically attractive with me, but if I kiss her, if I tell her, if I just look at her in the eyes.
Yeah, the attention actually gets you the physical response.
Absolutely.
Because the emotion makes us feel good, which then makes us want to caress or connect.
Right.
And do the things that you want to do.
Exactly. And let that be the foreplay of what we need to get.
Complete
absolutely.
Foreplay. Yeah.
Men, I don't need foreplay. I'm just, let's do this. When we're done, bye-bye. Kids are over here. I got to cook over here. I got to do some spreadsheet, do that. So that's my number one difference between you and I.
Okay.
Is our connection.
Okay. All right. My number one thing is, well, actually, it's not a number one thing because the three things that I selected are all kind of completely different. So if we really went into when I'm trying to relax, or even like, let's say I'm exhausted, taking a nap or even sleeping at night is really important. If you wake me up, I will freaking scream and yell at you.
Yes.
And be like, don't effing touch me. And it's not because of you. It's because I need the rest.
Right.
But you seem to not completely understand the need or the amount of my need for the rest, because you can function completely fine without it.
Right.
The other thing with that, connected to that, is like if I'm going to take a nap, he always effing wakes me up. Even if I'm down for an hour, he'll wake me up 15 minutes later. Honey, what are you doing? Honey, what are you doing? Or he'll even be like, honey, you overslept. It's the wrong time. And then he'll tell me that it's 10 times and I'll wake up in this massive panic. So I don't ever get that replenishment for energy. And that is my annoying trait.
So majority of women, or is it just you?
I don't know the answer to that. We should probably ask the audience.
What do you guys think? Yes. Majority of the women need more rest compared to men. Now, I don't need no rest. I know that my body's breaking down and I'm running on fumes, but I'll just keep going. If I have a choice from staying up or going to sleep, my eyes can't go to sleep. So,
but I also think that has to do with some of the hormone changes because you're getting older, and we talked about the different aldosterone and the testosterone and how those those hormone changes actually affect your sleeping capabilities.
That's funny because I think the first time that I realized that my hormones changing or I'm getting old is when I thought I can drink till 2 or 3 in the morning and get up to work for 6 or 7. Oh heck no. No.
That was the day I think you had an incident in the bathroom and had to come home.
No.
I think so.
Oh yes.
You were like sweating bullets, and then you had to take a break. Someone thought you had COVID, and you were like, "No, I just overdid it," and that was the end of it. And that just happens. And I still love him. If anything,
Yes.
it makes me happy and it gives me the feels.
So a lot of that goes in effect. The age, the older, what your history is, your family history. I'm sure that makes a difference.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
Tell me one more that's on your list because I'm kind of very.
This
intrigued
going to
to
hit
know.
a lot of people, but
It's going to hit a lot of people in a positive or a negative way.
both positive and negative. And I'm just going to get it out of the bag because I'm not that type of person to think that men are more superior than women or women are more superior than men. But you know what? If I have a choice between a man and a woman, I'm going to use their sexual being in my advantage. For example, I run a restaurant and it's not my business, but if it was my personal business, I would hire bartenders, females, bartenders. Why? They're easier to talk to, eye candy, profit goes up, their tips goes up. That's one example that I would use.
Well, and actually, it's kind of proven too. Like tips do definitely get more.
I will agree with the female population, like, oh, women are better than bartending. Well, yes and no. If they're at the same level on how to make stuff, I will always choose a woman to be my bartender, or I'd rather look at a female or talk to a female bartender.
You know what's really interesting is some of the research that I did for today's podcast is actually, it does kind of go back to the hunters and gatherers portion of female dynamics, which actually ends up being very influential when it comes to some of the subjects we're going to talk today. So I'm actually kind of glad that you brought that up. So we will add that in.
Well, in the reverse point, yes, women are better in that position, but I also have to agree that there's no place for women in certain instances. For example,
like what?
Let's say we have to have a quota. Or I'm with a group of people and we have to land navigate to a certain person, and carry all our rucksack, all that heavy weight. Well, physically, men are stronger than women, so I can't put women in the same level as men in strength and agility and stuff like that. Yes, there are some women that can pass the men's restrictions or whatever it is, just like that one swimmer, that female swimmer that had to change and went to swimming and broke all kinds of records. Well, yeah, you're stronger, man. You're physically stronger.
Well, and that actually has to do with oxygen levels and actually has to do with muscle mass. So we're
versus men and women?
We are actually going to talk about that today. But I will tell you that on a female perspective, there are things that I just don't feel like doing. I don't want to clean out the drain.
I don't want to make sandwiches.
Really?
Yeah.
They're so easy.
Hence, that's why.
But
make
see,
me
like
a
drain or changing out light bulbs or
so
doing
easy.
some of the men things just irritate the crap out of me. Like the garbage. The garbage drives me nuts. But I think that has to do with the fact that my hands are a lot smaller. The range of motion to lift certain things up is a little bit more difficult. So it becomes annoying for me where it's like you do it in 2 seconds and it's no problem.
You have 1,000 things more to do at the house than I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Okay. So we are actually going to go start with, I kind of really like this. Well, and I never finished my other one. Should I just ignore it?
Yeah. I'm reading it right there. Yes, you should ignore that.
You didn't even read it. It's in this spot, not that spot. No, they don't. And actually, language is something that women accelerate at, and that might be one of the reasons. So, one of the things I found very interesting is that there is an acoustic side. Men have enhanced ability to judge someone's size by the sound of their voice. Okay? So now what's really interesting is the sound, like all humans are very good at kind of pinpointing man versus women, in addition to their height, weight, and possibly some of their facial features. But men have a tendency to actually accelerate beyond women at this level, which I find very.
Facial hair or
No, it has to do with voice recognition only. You can actually depict basically whether someone, like the size of someone, whether they're big, tall,
just
whatever,
by the voice,
but just by their voice.
Interesting.
Which I thought was absolutely fascinating, because I know that there's a couple of times when I've had to like call someone for service at home and spoke to them on the phone. They might have called you, and you're like, and you immediately are like, I don't like that guy. Yeah. And then I'm like sitting there like, he was perfectly fine. Like there was no issue. And you're like, I don't like him. And that makes me wonder if some of that connectivity can go to your like own personal bags. You'll be able to flag someone out based off of their voice preferences. And then that might be why women and men select certain people differently, especially for like house calls or work environment. Because I would hire different people for work than you would. Some people you hire, I would never hire.
True.
But you also do like to give everyone a chance and like get them up. And you are the person capable of doing that.
Yeah, that opened up a lot of worms in that can right there.
Did I?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, just in my head.
Meaning too many things.
Well, I think it depends on the person's background. If obviously, if you're going to read an email, it's black and white. If you're going to hear a person's voice, you can pick up certain pitches, certain tones, and I think with a person's background, they can depict that person's, status or where they're, or what angle they're talking from.
Okay.
Or the things they said, they're not being too open. For example, if we're hiring an AC person, we want to do this way, and they're like, no, I don't think this is right, or we can do it this way, or just shuts off everything from what we're requesting without any explanation. I'm not going to work with someone.
See, and to me, I don't even want to hire anybody until I would meet them in person. I need to see how they poise themselves, like what their demeanors are, like how they respond to pressures. A lot of like meeting someone on a first impression level really can bring out a person's character, at least on an observational perspective.
I agree. Yeah,
so that is interesting, because when you go into acoustics versus like persona,
yeah,
that ends up tying into facial recognition, and that ends up tying into seeing. So men apparently have thicker retinas and larger M cells. Now, an M cell actually tracks movement of objects. Women have higher P cells. P cells are responsible for identifying objects such as textures and colors.
Interesting.
So
the emotion side.
The emotion side of vision.
And colors.
Well, the thing that I found interesting the most about this is this makes complete sense on why over the years I used to have him participate when it came to decorating the house. And the last 3 years? Yeah. 3 years I've been like, forget it, I'm not even asking. It hasn't been, yeah.
Yes, since.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I started noticing that I kept asking him questions about certain pieces, and his response was either the same or completely off. And it's because like the texture or the color shade would be different. And so therefore I would be like, yeah, I'm going to go ask my mom. And then.
Well, to be fair.
Well, it's proof. You have larger M cells. Yeah. You tracked objects, meaning if we were hunting, you would track the freaking object 10 times faster than I would. Or like when you're driving, even though I get all hysterical when you're driving, you actually have you probably have a faster response than I do, because you can detect the moving object faster than I can, which means I just need to chill the fuck down when we're driving.
Agree.
Okay. That we can agree on. Okay. Now, when it comes to brain hemispheres.
Like right and left?
Yes, right and left brain hemispheres. Men actually use the left hemisphere. the left hemisphere where women use the right hemisphere.
Even if they're left-handed?
Yeah. Apparently, men actually, their verbal capabilities are only on the left side of the brain. So where you have your, like, in the part of your brain that detects a verbal connection and language and all of that, you only use the left side of your brain.
No wonder we're always wrong.
Guess what happens with women? They use both, which actually means that we have a larger capacity for more words, more connectivity, right?
Yep.
So you have less connectivity with memory, language, and self-expression, and women have magnified because they actually use both hemispheres of their brain.
The majority is on the right.
Majority is on the right, but they do
Hence,
kind
that's
of
why women
blend.
are usually right. Or you go into a restaurant or an establishment and you're like, where's the bathroom? It's over here. Majority of them, women is on the right because they're right.
I don't know if that was like a tagline to get you some later, or if that was just
It's
was that
always
a
about getting me some later.
I'm pretty sure
Cashing
that
in
was
tonight. I'm cashing in.
okay.
No, but really, that makes so sense. So many.
It does make a lot of sense. There's a lot of things. Now, the other thing I found really funny is there's brain differences as early as 26 weeks in utero.
Wow.
26 weeks as a fetus. You're 26 weeks along in pregnancy. There is a difference between men and female. Female brains start developing thicker corpus callousness, which is what connects both sides of the brain, where men are not really connecting those things.
No.
Which I thought is freaking cool. And which also makes sense of why, like, I don't know about you, but, well, actually, I do know that on how sporadic my brain is, how I will talk about one subject and I'll jump to something else, and you're like, how the frick did we even get there? And that ends up being like a thing of conversation for at least 10 or 15 minutes because you're still trying to figure out how the blank I connected the dots.
Exactly.
That would explain why that is. Now, one of my issues with you, which I did not get to mention earlier, is like more of you have this passive aggressive ability. Now, and I'm not saying passive aggressive in a negative form. Like it always, passive aggressiveness is a little bit of a negative thing in general because they can just disconnect and act like something doesn't bother them, even though it's highly bothering you. But he has like this kind of effect where he'll go about his day and he'll just kind of bulldoze over things. And if you're kind of like in his line of fire, he's like, why didn't you move? You could have moved, instead of just being considerate of like stepping out of somebody's way.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what I find really interesting is that kind of can create like a stressful response, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, both men and women during stress reactions, they actually release oxytocin. Okay. FYI, the release of oxytocin is the same oxytocin that's released during orgasms and sex.
They shouldn't.
But they do.
Yeah.
Now, the difference is when women mixes the oxytocin release with their estrogen, it actually creates a calming effect. Where men, when oxytocin is mixed with their testosterone, it creates aggression.
Why is that?
Well, because of our chemical differences.
Yeah.
So what we
just had that earlier.
Well, that's my point, is that when it comes to women, like, okay, so we're going to go into both. Here's stress response. You're in a stressful environment. You freak the blank out. You can't control yourself. You get so riled up and upset.
Well, hold on.
What?
I think I can compose myself on the stress. But if
you compose yourself, but you still are a little on edge.
To be fair, if I feel like the situation is not gonna go right or it's not on my terms, I will bulldozer through everything.
However, I think a lot of that is that you're pre-assuming Like I've always said, my big quote is pre-assumption is a killer of communication. If you pre-assume the outcome of a situation, you're already acting in that regard. If you already pre-assume what the outcome's going to be, your behavior, your patience level, your reaction to things is going to depict the future. However,
that is true if we're presuming the positive and negative.
I'm so glad that you brought into this. Okay. Because that actually goes into female versus male responses to certain outcomes.
Well, if I'm expecting a positive outcome on something, for example, if I'm having a inspection and everything is looking great, my team members are doing everything they are, I'm expecting that. My response or my outcome prior to the inspection is going to be positive. It's going to be positive. Versus if I already know something's going to be effed up and we got to go en route.
What about situations that you can't control that aren't going to be you have no determined future until action is due course?
Difference between you and I always expect the worst, hope for the best.
Okay, so on to that. We're going to skip forward to feeling pain. When
women have more pain tolerance than men.
Oh, we're not talking about pain tolerance. We're not talking about pain tolerance, and we're not going to compare it because the reason why I didn't even want to discuss that level of pain tolerance is because there's no physical way to prove it.
We're getting close. All you men out there that turn women,
we are not even close to being able to determine it because even men transitioning or women transitioning still can't because genetically they were born as what they were. So they're predisposed to their scientific issues. So that does not apply. So what we're going to talk about is feeling more pain. While feeling more pain, women's left amygdala activates where a man's right amygdala responses. Now, with a female, the female left amygdala has to do with internal functions activating. Men actually have their right amygdala activating. An amygdala, I just can't stop saying that.
I know.
Stop, I'm having such a hard time right now. Okay, so the amygdala actually is processing memory, decision making, and emotional responses. When the right side is activated, it actually goes towards negative responses correlated to fear and sadness. Do you remember who I said has the right amygdala activated?
No.
Men. Men have a natural response for a negative response. Where women, when they activate the left side, they actually have a choice between pleasant and happiness or unpleasant. Now, the difference between men and women, men, their amygdala actually connects directly to declarative memory. Now, the declarative memory is facts and information from previous experiences, where women actually focus on reward systems. So women are probably more predisposed to look at the better outcome of a situation from a stress or a pain response, where men have a tendency to always outseek the bad. So that's would be a reason on why when you're like, rah, it's all going crazy, you actually go, ah, it's all going crazy.
True.
True? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So amygdala.
Amygdala.
That word is pretty hard. Is that the one with Bobby Boucher?
Who's Bobby Boucher?
That movie. What is that movie with the Waterboy?
The one with Adam Sandler?
Yes, and they were talking about. Oh man, I gotta find that.
Okay, hold on.
Let's carry
First
on.
of all, when it comes to that movie, I think I'm not even sure if he actually gets factual content when he creates this movie. It'd be really smart if he did, though. What are you thinking of? His amygdala was all off? Because didn't he have a problem?
There was a there was a scene where they used a. I don't even think that's the word, but it's so difficult that I want to say that is the word they use. But
You know what? You know what I actually kind of think about when you think of that.
Hmm.
So, one thing that I've actually this was probably the most impactful out of all of the things that I looked up. Now, when it comes to babies being born,
okay,
and we're talking about like defects and disabilities. Now, defects and disabilities could be something as like an ear not developing right. It also could do with
yeah,
a mental
clip,
illness. It could
yeah,
it could do with some abnormality that does
imbalance
that
of that.
it imbalance that doesn't work. It could be mental. It could be physical. It could be anything, right? But it gets put into like a defect category or a disabled category. Okay. Apparently, most babies that are born with defects or disabilities are predominantly men.
Hold up.
Yeah, they're predominantly men. Now,
Why?
this is what I
Why?
thought was so fascinating. So apparently, because women have an extra X chromosome, we can combat a defected X chromosome.
So that
It doesn't mean
alters
it doesn't.
the brain.
Okay, it
What
does.
about the
This has
the
to do with
body?
genes.
Oh, okay.
This has to do with genes. So your DNA creates a blueprint, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you have your amount of chromosomes, your 23 chromosomes,
Mhm.
right? And then you have an XY chromosome.
Right.
I have an XX chromosome. Let's say that I had a genetic defect on one of my X chromosomes. But because I have a backup X chromosome, it can combat the defect that was on the original X chromosome, which means I can override.
So you guys are already
Hold on.
backed up. Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you don't see defects or disabilities in women,
Right,
because you
right.
have seen them. But what that means is that when they were conceived, they actually ended up having 2 X chromosomes that had defects in them.
Oh, so the
Okay.
backup was back.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, if you had, let's say you had a defect on your Y chromosome, then that would obviously show up, and it doesn't matter what the X
There's no
chromosome.
backup.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But the X chromosome, if you had a defect on the X chromosome, you're screwed because you don't have a backup of the X.
Right, where women does.
Correct.
Interesting.
But I thought it was really fascinating that defects and that stuff are more predominantly men, because I was thinking about, a lot of the groups that you had, with Lamb's Farm when you worked and stuff like that, most of them were men.
Absolutely.
And it was like you had 1 or 2 females out of like 20.
So now I have another excuse. Why are you acting like this?
No, it's not. No.
Okay. No,
Okay.
that's true though. I've noticed that the Lamb's Farm. If you don't know what Lamb's Farm is an organization.
Amazing organization.
Yeah, amazing that they work with special needs. Not only they do work with them, but they help develop them. Not from the teen years to adult years. They even have a farm.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the Lamb's Farm, for them to work at and get that experience. And they have boarding, like housing for
the entire family, not just the individual. They separate.
It depends on what level
they are at,
just to get them developed to the next
and phased
stage.
into society.
And this wasn't script. Lamb's Farms right there has a great organization. And yeah, you're right. A majority of the Lamb's Farm bowling group was men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, does that target certain disorders or genes? For example, like Down syndrome, ADHD,
well, that ends up being like more genetic anomalies. So, like, if you think about, so I want to put this in the same category as recessive genes. I have curly hair.
Right.
This is a recessive gene. So the percentage of me being able to get this gene means that it has to be strong enough to override the normal genes of my sequence.
Right.
Okay. So I am 1 in 50 people in my family that have curly hair. 1 out of 50. Because I have 25 people on my mother's side. Not one of them has curly hair. and then I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same amount on my father's side, and none of them have curly hair, except for an uncle, a great uncle. My grandmother's brother had curly hair. So I obviously had the recessive gene, which then makes me wonder, I must have had it on both X chromosomes.
So I'm going to assume that ties in with the body structure, the format of a person's body growing up. Let it be obese, big bone, slender, slim.
Because
ability to work out.
Not necessarily. Not okay. So you do end up having DNA predispositions to what you inherit. So yes, but they go into separate categories, because you'll have like you'll have like ligament and tendon issues for one. You might even have heart issues or gout issues for another. So
I have gout. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like, that ends up being kind of more of a form of a recessive gene that you could end up getting. But the other thing too is, like, things like cancers, like, that's something that's, it can be passed down the road,
right?
But it's not necessarily going to be. It's just a little bit. It's a little bit different. There's a lot of factors when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I guess your blueprint coding is really what I'm trying to go.
So I'll be right back.
Where are you going?
I gotta go to the restroom.
You're
That's another thing that men do. We go to the bathroom wherever we want. We pee everywhere. I'm trying to train my son to pee where he's at, instead of coming back up from the beach all the way up to the lake house just to pee. No, pee standing up. Women really don't do that, do they?
We don't really get to know.
No, I think a lot of women who don't say, they actually do that, because the aftermath, women have to wipe, where men just jiggle.
Well,
I think some women don't do that because they have to wipe.
In my youth,
or they don't know how to lean to and pee.
No, in my youth, there might have been a time that if you had to, because you were in the woods or whatnot, and you could jiggle and you could at least be cleaned up enough to not have to deal with that. However, after children, that shit is gone.
For real. Like, you don't need to clean up nothing. Just
it's go. Like you sneeze and pee. Like, for Christ's sake. You already know this. I don't know why you made a face like
that's
as
my
if
favorite.
That's crazy.
That was my number 7. Women's pee when they sneeze after birth.
Good grief.
Men don't do that.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up because we're actually getting close to the end. And plus, you just said you have to pee. So, but one of the things I actually did want to address, because it was on my list, was sleep deprivation.
Oh, yeah.
So the really interesting thing about sleep deprivation is, for women, sleep deprivation actually results in mentally and physically suffering especially with age. So if men apparently can handle sleep deprivation much better than a woman, they don't actually end up having some of the health concerns that come with sleep deprivation. Men are like practically in the clear when it comes to that. So women actually, if you end up depriving women of sleep, you're increasing their risk of heart disease, depression, and blood clots.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, so he just whispered to me that he did not hear anything. So we're going to go into this other one, which actually has to do with, let's see if we can find it on this list of mine. We're almost done, and then I'll let you pee. Remember, you can pee anywhere, so you can just go outside and pee. So
big sniffer.
No, not big sniffer. Well, that's a different thing, and that has to do with
good
oxygen.
Night, baby.
Oh my God! Would you stop? You're so funny. Let's see. You processing emotion. No,
1,000
no.
gene differences. Oh yeah,
We
already
do.
talked about that.
No, we did not already talk about that.
Well, you
That's a
said
totally different thing.
women and men have different genes.
Well, you were talking about how you couldn't hear anything.
What?
You were talking about how you couldn't hear what I said.
I'll say it again. What?
What? Okay.
Right.
No, you don't get to go anywhere. You're on my podcast. You stay here till we're done. We're almost finished.
Tunnel vision. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh my
So,
God,
first and foremost, apparently men have this ability where when they are born, and I can't find this where it was in my notes, but at least I remembered clearly enough because I remembered it so vividly. Apparently, when it comes to men, there is a brain response to repeated sounds that men do not recognize it as important.
what the?
Apparently, when you have all of your messaging coming in and you hear your auditory comes in, if you hear repetitive hearing, like a repetitive of the same sound or repetition of whatever, I could say honey, 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 whatever, your brain, because of all of your testosterone levels and all of your makeup, it will automatically say, oh, that's not an important sound.
It's not an important sound?
Yes, repetitive sounds are registered in your brain carriers or your brain center as not important.
Is that the same for important sounds?
No, because
so we don't even pull out the important. It's like everything.
No, I mean, like you could actually, like if I did the same repetitious sound, if it was something that was important and I did the same sound over and over and over again, your brain would categorize it as not important. So if I'm talking to you about the same thing over and over again, your brain just shuts off completely. It just shuts off.
It's not even talking. It's just a sound wave.
It's the same repetitive sounds. So if you had a chirping bird, like we hear these chirping birds, can you even hear the chirping birds in the back?
No.
Okay. So like that's a perfect example. The chirping birds in the back that I'm so loudly hearing, you cannot hear because it's unimportant. Your brain registers it like it's not important sequence.
Wow. That's amazing.
Which I find kind of crazy. So.
I'm going to have to use that at my work.
Don't repeat things because I won't hear you. Because, by the way,
I got to find that brain wave or that certain pattern that negatively impacts men. Because I have to believe that science is using the same thing in politics.
I think everybody uses everything in messaging. I don't think it's just politics. I think it's also like sales tactics, all of it. They target particular people.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you look at like marketing and things when it comes to like females, it's always targeted for an emotional response of like, and that's the thing that I really despise about especially the health industry is they always prey on your insecurities to get the sale. And they do, and it's not like a man thing. For men, they go for the like, don't you want to be a beefcake? But for females, it's like, aren't you tired of that tire around your waist and feeling frumpy and exhausted? And it's like, F you, dude. You don't even know.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed that, and I'm being biased because not only you're my wife, but I've seen other people in your profession. They utilize that marketing scheme to benefit themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's not really benefiting the client where you erase everything what the marketing or what other people believes they are.
Right, that's because I think it's bullshit.
Yeah, it is bullshit.
That's
and
just
you
bullshit.
Market, every person has a different level of physical goals and stuff like that. You target their goal, not what everyone thinks. Oh, you need to look this way. You need to do that. No, fuck that. I'm sorry, but you target their goal.
Right. Well,
awesome.
and that's the thing that I find the most interesting is when it comes to, you're right. You're 100% right. When they're doing politics, when they're doing that, they are preying on the benefit that they can get their messaging through the way that you're wired. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what's true. It's the politics, it's the sales, it's corporate America. It's like that's exactly what they do. They pry on those. I want to. I don't want to say weaknesses because that promotes a negative intent. But I want to say like they pry on the quirks that make you who you are to get what they want.
It's not really weakness.
It's a manipulation tactic.
It's a pool. People jumped into that pool for whatever reason it is.
Right. I completely agree with that as well. At any rate, thank you, honey, for being on here. I know you have to pee. I'll let you run away if you need to.
I'm peeing right now.
Because you can pee anywhere.
Yes.
I'm at that age. Love that. I can't wait.
It doesn't bother me mentally.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Capitol Health. If you want to stay on top of getting newsletters and update, please visit the website capitalhealth.com for all of your health updates on top of my squirrely blogs that I like to write once a month. You can also follow us on Facebook and YouTube. But in addition to that, you can follow the podcast if you're not a visual person. We are available on iHeartRadio and Spotify. I'm still working on iTunes. It's probably because there's a lot of steps and I don't have the time. So eventually I'll get there. In the meantime, don't forget to join us next Saturday at 5:30 when we are doing Midsummer Dreams. I have not decided if we are going to push that podcast to Sunday when we arrive or if I do it in the car.
Because we're driving back home on Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah. So I might end up doing it in the car. We might have a specially weird... I have no idea. It could be interesting. And he might even join me on it. Or Kai.
Or, like every other man out there is thinking about it, what about the connection? We might not get connection. So we have to...
well, yeah, but that's because you guys are really good at thinking of that strategic thought, which is one of my favorite things about you, because I don't have to do the extra. X and Y. X and Y. Okay. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to all of our YouTube. And remember to take care of each other because you are somebody's everything.
You're my everything.
Oh, that's sweet. You're my everything. All right. Bye, guys.